Welcome to the Reaching Up podcast. I'm Ron Farris.
And I'm Daniel Locke.
And today we are continuing our season of asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the question today is it okay if I'm afraid to give things up to God?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I like that question.
Why?
Because I think I was afraid to give things up to God for a long time. Yeah.
So this is a personal introspection question.
Mm-hmm. A lot of these questions have been a question that I've had at some point in my life, and so I think if I've had it, probably somebody else has had it. And
so now you have all the answers, right? So
I won't say all of them, but I've got a few. Yeah.
All right. So before we get going, let me say this: if you're on YouTube, be sure and hit that like button for us. Subscribe. And be sure and tap the bell, and be sure and get the next episode first. So if I'm okay, is it okay if I'm afraid to give things up to God? We're talking about surrender. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes that word.
Yeah. Well, why is it important, do you think? Surrender. What is surrender, and what are we talking about when we talk about giving things up? I mean, I'll agree with you that, that doesn't sound very attractive. I've got to give up something. I've got to surrender something. That's not a popular concept, I would imagine. So why is it so important, do you think?
I think in a lot of ways it's because for me, I won't we on us, for me, it has to do a lot with my heart posture towards the Lord. And so what I mean by that is if I don't give it up, if I don't surrender it, then I'm trying to control it. And I'm trying to be my own God. I'm trying to be, whether something good happens, whether something bad happens, like I'm control of my own destiny, I guess. And it's that surrender. It's like nobody loves the word surrender, especially here in the United States. We never surrender. Like that's just, we take pride in that. Like, and in some instances that's a good thing. And in some instances that's a noble thing. And so I'm not going to downplay that.
I'm going to bet you surrender is not popular anywhere where there are human beings.
100%.
If I had to bet, I'm not an expert, but
yeah.
Well, the Bible, which we tend to end up talking about, from time to time, says that surrender to God is a foundational concept of faith and discipleship. We've talked about both of those things on the podcast, and as you said, it involves yielding something, but we're yielding our will, our desires in our life to God's authority, and that doesn't just mean that we're yielding. It also means in lieu of doing what we want, we're trusting that what He wants is better for us. And that means that we're trusting in His wisdom and His love for us and His sovereignty, His power to do anything He wants for us or for those around us or for other people through us. And it also means that He may actually know what's better for us than we do. So when I think about surrender, I think, well, there are some great verses that speak directly to surrender in the Bible, Old and New Testament, but just focusing on the New for a second. So let's break it down and talk about what surrendering looks like. And then we can decide whether it's okay or not, right? Because when you talk about surrender, I'm not sure that I immediately know what you mean. What you mean by surrender may be totally something different to me, because I may be thinking about having to tithe, or give money, put money in the plate or whatever, and you might be talking about yielding some major goal or something in your life that you consider to be an integral part of who you are, and we'll talk about that, because I think we probably both have done some of that in our walk. But back to Paul, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize because I use this verse every single episode of it. It's one of my favorites, right? Romans chapter 12, the letter to the Romans. Romans were the Gentile church. They were Rome, I think there's a good argument to be made that in the book of Revelation, Rome is identified, as the center of Antichrist activity, of, the seat of evil on the face of the earth, the Roman Empire. And, there's a lot that could be unpacked there, but we're not going to do that today. But the letter that Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles, wrote to the Romans starts off in chapter 12, verse 1 with, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service, or your reasonable act of worship, some people translate it as. And he says, and be you not conformed to this world, but be you transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you might know that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Yeah. That is surrender, characterized as a living sacrifice.
I like that.
Well, I think that's what it is. I have the right as a human being with free will. God's gift of free will enables me to do whatever I like. I can do absolutely anything I want to do, and I've got some restrictions. We have laws that say you can't do this, you can't do that. That doesn't mean I can't do those things. It just means that if I do, I'm breaking the law. But this is talking about presenting my body, which is, let's just say, presume that that's me, all of me, not just one piece of me, but all of me. Present my body as a living sacrifice. And I love it the way he says that is holy and acceptable to God. We are flesh. We are not by nature holy people. But what I read that to be saying is that, as I make the decision to surrender my life or parts of my life to God, I am doing something that God has made holy because it is his will. And I can honestly say every time I do it that I'm doing God's will, which is, how many people say they would love to know what God's will is, well, this is an easy one here. Surrender is apparently God's will. And we're going to talk about it. I think the way I see it is that surrender is surrender with benefits.
Yeah.
It's not that we're just asked to lay down our life and to, take on, we're going to talk in an episode about, some Christians that don't look so happy. I think the word may be miserable, we're going to talk about why that is. And, that's coming up. But in this episode, we're talking about surrender of my heart and my will, which really means my right to do what I please, and that certainly can take the form of certain actions that I like to do. It can take the form of things that I don't do that I want to do. It's anything that I have the right to do, and I make the decision to give that up.
Yeah.
For a reason, and I'm not just doing it because it's a great idea. It's because there is a reason to do that. Now, in Luke chapter 9, we have this incredible statement, and again, I use this every episode. Jesus said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow me." Now, there he leads with deny themselves, but that smacks of surrender, right?
Yeah.
And, denying self there is at the heart of surrender, putting God's purposes ahead of my personal ambitions. Sounds easy enough, but I've talked a lot about this. I work a lot with people who are struggling with addiction, and we've talked about the 12-step programs, and the 12 steps, are pretty much, I think, honored around the world. And the third step says that I made a decision to turn my life and my will, which is all of me, right? My life and my will, that's what's left after that. I made a decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God as I understood him. Again, that's a decision to completely and totally surrender. It's not, I'll give him, and I'll give him this one thing, but I'm not giving him anything else. That is a concept of just total and complete surrender. So, all those, including Christ there, all those people are talking about this idea of surrendering being a good thing. So what's so good about it? Have you ever surrendered anything?
Yeah.
You want to talk about it?
Not really.
I know. I know. I'm gonna let you talk about it now.
No, I like the example you used earlier when like we present our bodies as a living sacrifice. So I always giggle when I see that or I laugh at it because like I don't know if you know what the Old Testament context was the sacrifice like
Mhm.
it was usually killed. So if it's a
Mhm.
living sacrifice, like we can crawl off the altar and run away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like to visually see is like yeah we are presenting ourselves saying hey we don't have to be here but we're choosing to be here.
Mhm.
And I like that. And so I think it goes with um, when Paul was talking in First Peter. I like the language here because it just helps me understand it better.
Mhm.
But in First Peter 5, it says it starts at verse 6 and it says, "Humble yourselves therefore under the mighty hand of God, so that He may exalt you at the proper time." And it said and verse 7 is kind of the why. It says, "Casting all your cares on Him because He cares about you."
Mhm.
And then it talks about being sober minded because your adversary, we have an adversary, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion looking for who he can devour.
Mhm.
So I don't know if there's a reason there, but like it's not I don't know, it's easily misunderstood because it's like, well, I just can't do anything that I ever want to do again. And I'm
Mhm.
going to be miserable if I do that. And I don't think that's I think I thought that and I don't think that anymore.
I think it's natural to think that.
Hmm.
Honestly, this sort of that inertia, but there's a reason that we have to be told to surrender.
Yeah.
It's because it's not innate. It's not automatic.
Yep.
It's not the first thing you think of when you wake up in the morning. What can I surrender
Yeah.
today?
How can I, or if you change the language of that, how can I serve other people first?
Well, no, when you put it that way, it sounds a little better,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well,
But
it helps me better see it like it's not just like I don't know. How can so here's what I'm trying to reframe and rechange little things I say to help myself understand it. So part of it that I'm starting to do is like when I pray over my food in the morning or in the afternoon, whenever I eat. I don't like I've got this very ritual thing I say like, Lord, please bless the food, nourishment of my body your service. Keep going.
mm-hmm.
Instead, I'm like, Lord, let the energy I get from this food be used to serve you. And it just like I'm like, oh my goodness, I actually blessed my food. And like there's a reason I'm blessing my food and there's a reason I'm acknowledging God saying, hey, I'm thankful for this food and I want this to be used for something good by you. And so I think it's already just changed. Like I'm just giving him more credit and I realize it. It's not just a ritual. It's
Oh
not just
yeah.
something I say over and over again. I'm like, so I'm going to start doing little things like that because even this like surrendering your will to God, it sounds like something that we say in church a lot.
Uh-huh.
But like I don't know what that means sometimes. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what
Well,
that means.
that's a great point. I think a lot of times people that are, and again, I'm keep skipping to our next episode. But a lot of people who are seem to be miserable in their faith are stuck in tradition and
Hmm.
ritual, and they're
Yeah.
not getting any spiritual depth out of it.
Yeah.
And that is a great point. I don't think surrender is a once and done thing. It wasn't in my life. I know.
Hmm.
When I when God's spirit got hold of me and decided it was time for me to change some things. He body slammed me and took me down. I mean, I was flying pretty high. I would say I was arrogant, and I mean, honestly, I would probably describe myself as insufferably
Hmm.
arrogant, and selfish and self-centered, and I didn't realize it. I mean, we're the last people to realize that when we're in that situation. I think, at least I was. But God just the day came where I think He said, okay, Ron, I've given you all the room to run with this that you're going to get, and
Hmm.
you're mine, and I'm ready for you to grow up and be a man. And He just took me down. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it, without getting into specifics. There was nothing that didn't crash and burn there for a season. And then He didn't leave me there. He came back and He picked me up and He started to rebuild me, And so for me, the surrender was just sort of a total and an absolute horrific defeat,
Hmm.
and failure, a catastrophic failure of all of my, of all my schemes and everything I was doing, and how I'd been sort of, spinning the plates in the air and, really living hard and fast. It just came crashing down. And so surrender for me was, it was an event for sure, but then once I got past that initial part, I still had some what we call character defects that were still active, little things that, I did that were, I'm sure, annoying to God, but they were also not spiritually beneficial for me. And there were a lot of things in that category, like I'm going to just use an example, cursing, After I became a Christian, I was still cursing, more than I should. And I guess a little bit for a Christian really that wants to be like Christ is too much. I can't imagine Christ walking around, cursing like I did. But, I go to lunch with my pastor and I'd, drop a few curse words just in the process of conversation, making a point, really not paying that much attention to it. It was just the way I was. And then at some point, the Holy Spirit, started to convict me of that and said, you really, there's scripture that says you don't need to do that. But, I knew that, but I don't know what. I guess I just thought it didn't apply to me. I don't know. But I started to become convicted by that. I think that was the Holy Spirit saying, okay, Ryan, it's time to, prune a little bit more. And the next thing you knew, I was trying to stop cursing. And I know I've told this before, but I told my sons, who were little boys at the time, I said, Daddy's going to stop cursing. And every time you hear me say a curse word, you get $1. And of course, they're just, become little devils because they want me to curse more often.
That might have been motivation for
less.
them.
Yeah, it was not a great plan. But, despite that, over time, I managed to pretty much do that. And, now I save, cursing for, like traffic, in places where it's just unavoidable. But my point is that is a form of submission to God or surrender to God. I surrender my right to talk like a sailor. Now let's look at that objectively. Did that hurt me any? No. Did it take away from the quality of my life? No. Did it make me a better person? Yes, I think you could make that argument, even though it's just words. The likelihood is much greater that if I'm talking to you about the beauty of following Christ and worshiping God and all that, if I'm not cursing, every few minutes, that you're probably going to give me a little more credibility. And maybe what I'm saying might mean a little more to you when you can see that it works in my life. Because why would you want it in your life if it's not really working so well in my life? And that's just one little example. Another example would be, abusing alcohol or drugs or sex or anything else when you hold yourself up to the world to be a follower of the God of the universe, who says those things are wrong. He doesn't say those things are wrong because he wants to deprive us of fun. He says those things are wrong because they hurt us and they hurt other people. And it doesn't take long nowadays to find people who went down that rabbit hole in their life, and then at some point, if they're further down the line, they almost always come back and talk about how they ruined their life, or how they woke up and realized how what they had done, or how far they had fallen, or what a mess their life was in. Those things are not good. God knew that, so that's why he's telling us not to do them, but I'll tell you, I was sort of that guy that said, if God says not to do it, I want to try it. I want to see what the deal is, Never a good idea, never a good plan, not proponent of that on our podcast. I think we should listen to God. If he says surrender, then I think we should say, okay, how quick, how much, and tell me more. I want to know how to do it.
Yeah, I want us to go back to something you said earlier. When you said it hurts us and it hurts other people. And I don't even know if you realize you said it just like that, but I
did, because that's exactly what my life has been, is a series of things I did that were stupid that hurt other people that I loved. Sorry to admit it, but that's the truth.
Well, that helps. That's interesting, because I've heard sin described as that thing right there, as something that hurts us or hurts other people. And so if we're going back to even coming at it from a Christian perspective, even right? Like, because if you don't know the Lord, if you don't have a relationship with Him, then there's no reason for you to surrender anything, because you're just trying to get whatever temporary joy or temporary or fake fulfillment that you
Looking
can
for
get.
love in all the wrong places.
100%, because you're trying to feel that, and like, and so for us, we're not coming from it from that way. But I think you said it well. Like, did it help me? You said I don't know, but it helped other people around you. And so I think in a way we like to, and I was talking to my wife about this yesterday. It makes it easier for me to do anything if I know the reason for it. And sometimes what I would like to do is read this and say, all right, I don't want to face the consequences of hurting people. I'd rather change before that happens. The blessing and the story of the Bible is that, like, hey, it's filled with people who were warned or knew better, messed up, but there's still redemption. Like, we have a patient God. Yes. And so
thank God.
If we can, I want to learn more and more how to not hurt people first. But I love how you said that, like, so how that puts in perspective for me then. So surrender then is allowing myself to be used by God to help other people.
Yeah.
And
it's allowing God to change me. It's acknowledging, to me, it is acknowledging that God knows better than I do what kind of person I should be, what kind of man I should be. You know, and I mean, you think about it. He's God. I mean, you know, He knows all my potential. I don't even know what my potential is. You know, He created me in the womb. He created you. You know, I don't believe that God just creates us randomly to see what happens. I think He knows when He puts us in a particular place. You know, the Bible says that, you know, God chooses the time and the place where men will live. You know, that's not random. That's very deliberate placement and timing on God's part. And so I do absolutely think that means that I have a potential, that and you have a potential, and it is possible, because of God's gift of free will, for us to fail to achieve our potential.
Yep.
C.S. Lewis famously said that to the extent we fail to achieve God's design for our lives, we fail to exist.
Wow.
You know, we just waste space and waste time. Yes, that hurts other people. You know, and I may have misspoke if I said that it doesn't help me, but it helps other people. No, it a lot of times, not a lot of times, every time that I surrender something to God, I become a better person, and that can't help but help other people around me.
Yeah.
And inspire other people and all that. And it's not me doing anything. It's me surrendering.
Yeah.
And God then is coming in and saying, okay, I'm going to honor your surrender by making you a better man. You know, that's not a bad deal. There's no downside to that.
Yeah.
You know, and our world says, you know, oh, don't do it. You know, be what you want to be what you are. You know, This is a big thing. You hear a lot of people that get way off into you know, sinful life of one kind or another, saying, well, I've just got to be who I am. You know, well, bad idea. You know, you may want to try surrendering who you are and ask God what He thinks might work better for you, and you might find that you enjoy incredible success and joy and peace and happiness by being something that you never imagined that you could be. That's the Christian experience. I don't care what people say. It is not hard. You know, Jesus said, you know, my burden is light. You know, my yoke is easy. A lot of people walk around acting, again, next episode, a lot of people walk around acting like, you know, it's, you know, they're just, you know, they're bearing the weight of the world. I don't get that. I don't, you know, surrender is, it's hard at first. The first few times you do it, it's hard. But then once you do it and you see what happens, it's like, what else can I surrender? You know, I'm looking around, you know, what is it that I've got left? It is a beautiful process. We're not talking about something that is miserable. We're talking about something that is a critical part of the Christian experience. So it's not just a New Testament concept. Back in Proverbs, rather, written by Solomon, the son of David, who was, of course, supposedly the wisest man who ever lived. He wrote in Proverbs 3:5 and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Now
Mhm.
he's talking about surrender there, surrendering to God's will. God knows what's better for you than you
Mhm.
know. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight.
Yeah.
Now, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Surrender yourself, submit all your ways to God, and he will make your path straight. That is an immediate quid pro quo that says you give up, you lose, you win.
Mhm.
You win big. It's like buying $1 lottery ticket and winning a million or $100 million lottery.
Mhm.
It's exactly the same kind of math.
Yeah.
Spiritual math. We're back to that. Surrender though is not just. It's not just an action. It has to have some basis, and I think the basis for surrender would be trust.
Yeah.
I trust God. God says surrender, and I will, give you, the life that I have here in my mind, in my vision of you before you were ever born. I have this vision of who you can be. You're not going to be that unless I make you that. All you've got to do is give up your right to be whatever else it is you want to be, and I will make your path straight. I will make you a success. I will give you a life that blows your mind. It takes trust to step out, take that step of trust and say, okay, I'm not going to do what I think I want to do.
Yeah.
This thought process about I want to do this, I want to do that selfishness and self-centeredness I was talking about, that gets us in a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think?
Absolutely.
It's and let's talk about this. I know we have a lot of people listening to this podcast that are around the world, but here in the United States of America, self-reliance is a virtue.
Yeah.
Men, and I assume some women, but I know almost all men. I've only been mostly around men in my life, but men are raised believing that they need to be self-reliant,
Mm-hmm.
Independent, all those things. And then you hit these verses like we're reading, and this is in the New Testament too. James, the half brother of Jesus, wrote in his letter in James 4:7, submit yourselves to God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, same thing, as Solomon was saying,
Mm-hmm.
2,000 years earlier. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. That's exactly what the verse you used a minute ago from Paul.
Mm-hmm.
In Galatians, Paul said, in 2:20, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Now, what that's saying is that if I surrender my life, then Christ actually lives through me.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of sounds, I guess, academic, but let's talk about it this way. I believe that because I have surrendered my right to do things the way I want, that when I surrender myself successfully, God uses me to work through me to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's really a pretty good deal because, if I believe that God is working through me to help other people, then I'm not tempted to be proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not tempted to be, arrogant about it because I realize it's not me at all.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make me any less of a man. I would argue it makes me much more of a man.
Yeah.
To be a man who yields my will to God and lets God work through me. The likelihood is very high that if God is working through me, the things that I do manage to do for other people are going to be meaningful.
Yeah.
And truly good. Not again because I did it that way, but because I yielded my right to do whatever I thought was the situation was required, and I let God lead me in what to do. And God always knows what needs to happen.
Yeah.
I just love that. You remember when Jesus was on the cross, or right before he went to the cross, you remember he had that moment where he was saying, Lord, if this cup can pass from me, let it pass. Because he knew what was about to happen. He was about to go through a horrific, horrible death for sins he did not commit.
Mm-hmm.
But then he came right back, and what did he say? He said, not my will, but thine be done. That's Matthew 26:39. That is the ultimate example of surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And if Christ can do it, When he was about to be murdered on a cross, which was the most a Roman crucifixion was probably arguably one of the most painful ways to die. And at this point, he'd already been tortured. The scripture says to the point of being almost beyond recognition physically, but whatever it was horrific. Mm-hmm. And then he is going to be crucified, and he is saying, I'm going to do this because I'm going to surrender my right to be right. Mm-hmm. Because he certainly was right. He had never committed a sin. He had never done anything that was deserving of death, but yet they were going to kill him. And, he said, if I need to die so that other men may live, then that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. And he did that. And because he did that, you and I are sitting here today, knowing that our sins are forgiven. All the bad things we've done or ever will do have been taken care of in God's eyes because of Christ's sacrifice.
And I wonder if that doesn't kind of wrap it up in a really good way for today, even just the coming full circle of, because I think Jesus is our perfect example. I love that story, and I think it's such a perfect example of what that looks like. And it's almost something you said earlier of, well, what's if we don't surrender, then we're going to go looking for something to fulfill us. We're going to be looking for something. And I think everyone, whether you've realized it or not, everyone who has dealt with any type of, and I'm not even going to go so far as to say an addiction. I'm just saying something you're like, if I can get this, I will be happy. If I can get this type of car, man, I'll be set. And then you get that type of car and like, you're happy for a day, a
5
week.
minutes.
You're happy for a little bit. And then you're like, yeah, that wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it was. Mm-hmm. Or it's like, well, I just needed it to be this. It actually, like, if I had gotten this model, it would have been, if I had gotten this. And yeah. I think you can fill in the blank, and you can go to a whole bunch of unhealthy behaviors like alcoholism, like fill in the blank with any other type of addiction. Yeah. Like, and if you're in that, like you're always trying to get a little bit higher of a high. Mm-hmm. Like people don't just overdose. They're trying to get more and more because it's not satisfying. Mm-hmm. So I think for us, it changes the game. So I think it can be scary, but on the other side, I think Jesus' example is the perfect one, because if that's what it looks like in my life, then it doesn't mean that I'm just willy-nilly not. It doesn't mean that I'm not still me. Like I'm still exactly the man that God created me to be. But if I can say, hey, this is what I would like. I don't know if this is your will. This is what I would like. This is what my desire is. I don't think there's anything sinful about this desire. I think this is a good desire, but it's your will. I want to do what you want to do. And I think that kind of summarizes the surrender for me is like, if it's a life of surrender, and it's not just, it's me trying to live my life that in a way that honors the Lord, but not being but just being honest and saying, hey, like, this is what I would like. I'm going to give it to you though, and let you lead that, because everybody has a different life. And I used to think that there has to be one, this is the Christian life, and like it has to be, and so we're gonna have a bunch of people look the same, and like that's not true. No, everybody's life and relationships are different. Yeah. So I love how that story kind of summarizes it. Like Jesus knew what was coming up, and he was still very much describing the Christian life as self-control, serving others. Like he was aware of what he wanted. He gave it over to the Lord what he wanted, and in turn it benefited a lot of other people. And so it's kind of the same for us. We use the term the hands and feet of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I love that in 1 Corinthians 12, that imagery. Like, so hands and feet, like you either go to somebody, or you use your feet to go somewhere, or you use your hands or an arm to hug somebody. Mm-hmm. And so like, if we're surrendered, then we can go to people who need it, or whoever we're around, we can be Jesus with skin on. I always say that, but like, I think that's perfect. And I think that's exactly what Jesus modeled. And I think it helps us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd rather be that than, just Ron. When Ron was in charge of things, it just never really worked out that well, and God has a much, much bigger point of view to see what's best and what's best for everybody in a situation, what's needed and not needed. And, I'm going to trust him. So what I hear you saying then, as we round here toward home, is that it's if you're afraid to surrender to God, it's okay. Mm-hmm. That's a natural thing, but try it. You'll like it. I mean, that's what I hear you saying. Mm-hmm. And it's not just because it's blind trust. It is trusting God to do what he said he would do.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know about you, but I think God's pretty good at keeping his promises.
Yeah.
Well, so that's sort of our take on whether it's okay to be afraid to give things up to God, and I think we're both saying, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. So we want to thank you for listening to the Reaching Up podcast. If you're on YouTube, again, be sure and hit that like button if you like us. Subscribe. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. We've got more and more of those, and we really appreciate you guys. And then also hit that bell button. Be sure to get this next episode, which will be about people that may not look so happy at church. We'll help you figure that one out. If you're listening on Spotify, iHeart, or Apple Podcast, be sure and follow us, rate our episodes, and like us. Leave us a comment anywhere. We read all those and we take them to heart. We pay close attention to those. We're interested in what you think. And then finally, check us out on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And as always, be sure and send us an email if you'd like to ask us a question, have some dialogue with us, or, just give us some ideas or thoughts about topics or things you'd like to hear discussed. Then that email address is contact@reachinguppodcast.com. Thanks for listening.